Hey everyone, Trevor at Toploaded Gaming. This video is a response to Haedox. He made a video earlier today discussing this ongoing debate. A couple of months ago, right after Cuphead came out, a writer named Dean Takahashi had put out a gameplay video where he just failed and failed and failed on this tutorial for Cuphead. He couldn't even beat the first level. And I mean, this thing just went on and on and on for I think 26 minutes until he finally gave up. And it was really kind of cringe-worthy and everything. But to a certain extent, I mean, it's understandable. I don't think Dean is some bad guy or whatever, but we'll get into that. The first thing I'd kind of like to point out to Haedox is, while I'm probably going to discuss a few different topics, Haedox's main point in his video was basically a response to a tweet from Ian Miles Chong. And that tweet stated,
"Game journalists are incredibly bad at video games. It's painful to watch this. How do they think they're qualified to write about video games?"
Now, the way I perceived Haedox's video and what he said in it, it's kind of like, I feel like he's responding to someone that misspoke. Now, I could be wrong about that. This could be my own bias because I have a totally different outlook on this debate that's happening right now. Full disclosure, I haven't gone on Ian Miles Chong's Twitter and check out to see if, you know, he reworded his comment or he doubled down on his comment. And I'm not going to, because I kind of feel like, you know, it's really irrelevant to my video. From what I saw, for the most part, the debate really wasn't, can someone that's this bad at games write about games? It's more about, if someone is this bad at games, and to me, from him playing the game and his doubling down, defending his gameplay, is kind of evidence that you don't really want to trust what this person says on any given game. It's not so much that he can't write about games. I mean, the guy's free to do so. I wouldn't want to be the person to stop someone from doing what they want to do, especially if it's already an established profession or passion of theirs. I'm not that type of person. But if you're the type of person that's on these websites, first of all, I'm not. I don't really pay attention to reviewers or anything. I might watch channels that people do reviews or anything, but it's not going to depend on whether or not I buy a given game. Me personally, I look at gameplay videos and I make my opinions based solely on gameplay videos. That's how I personally kind of gauge whether I'm going to buy something. But if someone out there, which apparently, according to a lot of people, that's how they buy their video games. If someone like Dean Takahashi, who can't, I would argue he can't even play a Mario game, okay? If he's writing about this game and it's dissuading, let's say it dissuades 100,000 people from buying the game. You know, 100,000 12-year-olds out there. I mean, I don't know. Like you said in your video, I don't want to straw man. I don't want to try and say things that are based on nothing. I'm not really for that. I don't mind being wrong or called out on something if I'm wrong. I'm glad when I'm wrong because I get to learn something and correct myself in the future. But I think that if people are buying games or not buying games based on what this guy's writing, and just to be clear, he's a writer, he's not really a critic, but he's still, if he's writing about Cuphead, to me, as someone who's looking for information from this person on whether to get something or not, or maybe it's the first thing that I see. His article is the first thing that I see about Cuphead. I think you should take a grain of salt, knowing that the guy can't really play the game to save his life. And it's not just as easy as, well, this game, yeah, but he could turn on this other game and he'd be fine at it. The tutorial and the gameplay are indicative of him not being good at a slew of 2D games. Run and gun, shmups, games like Mario, which I find so funny. It's basically, and that was another part of the debate that I kept hearing, was all of these journalists, let's players, writers, they have been used to all these new style games coming out. Now with indie games getting more popular, they're not used to playing some game that is maybe similar to the old style, more difficult NES style games of the past. If someone had never played NES games, I would expect something like Dean's playthrough. Even if he had never played New Super Mario Bros. DS or New Super Mario Bros. For the Wii or New Super Mario Bros. Wii U, the tutorial alone tells me this guy has not even played to the point of even maybe getting to the second world. This guy has not played like a Mario game, or he's just as bad as he is in Cuphead in a Mario game. Point me out if I'm wrong. That is exactly what his gameplay footage of the tutorial says. Now, it kind of relates to Dean's doubling down in defense of his gameplay, so I'm going to read that really quick for people that aren't familiar with it. Dean says,
I've watched the comments on this thread just to see how mean they would be. I think it's useful to show my gameplay experience. I did not intentionally play poorly to troll anyone, but it serves as an interesting social experiment. I walk into a game cold, and this is the play that results. The video shows it's a notch more difficult than your typical Mario game. In fact, if you are expecting Mario, as the story says, then you are thrown off. And it shows that the developers are going to leave a lot of people who are worse than me behind. Maybe they're fine with that. Maybe they want to target gamers with a love for difficult games. That's fine, but I think they should signal that. How many games actually come out with a tutorial these days? They're not popular, but if necessary, that is a signal this is going to require some skill. As for other comments on this thread, I wonder why they are hostile to someone who is viewing the game as a beginner. Are we that intolerant of people who are not gamers? Should I have played the scene over and over again until I was good at it, and then turn the recording on? Like so many of those perfect video walkthroughs you see? I believe that games can be made accessible and inviting to people who are not hardcore fans, and these people can be accommodated inside the same game that is appealing to hardcore fans, through difficulty levels. So when people tell me that I shouldn't be playing this game because on my first play I was pretty lousy, that's an attitude that argues that games should be shut off in their own little corner, only played publicly by the masters and the experts. I disagree with that view entirely, and I believe it leads to elitist attitudes that allow gamers to look down on other people, and that only leads to a more fragmented world of haters.
we have a few things to kind of go over with that. First thing is the Mario comment. The video shows it's a notch more difficult than your typical Mario game. In fact, if you're expecting Mario, as the story says, then you are thrown off. Okay? The stretch in the tutorial, there's the part where it has the sort of platforming aspect without using the dash button. They have the little pink circles that you jump through. Okay? Now, how many levels in the history of playing Mario, how many levels have you had to do the same thing on Mario where you hit consecutively, you hit turtles or something that you bouncing on? How many years has Mario games been out that have that specifically in the Mario game? Because to me, that's where I'm saying that his gameplay is indicative of he's not even good at a basic Mario game, which he uses in this comment as a defense for why he sucks so bad. So I don't think it's as simple as he's just not that good at this game, but he might be better at another game. Sure, if we're talking maybe a Gears of War campaign playthrough or something like that, if we're talking about a 2D style game, unless we're talking like some sort of turn-taking RPG game, if we're talking about action platformer, run and gun, a shmup game, I think it's perfectly reasonable to take from his gameplay that he's not going to be good at those games. Like, he's never played like a 2D game aside from maybe some RPG turn-taking game. It seems like he's never played a game like this or anything close to it. And then he says, maybe they're fine with that. Maybe they want to target gamers with a love for difficult games. That's fine, but I think they should signal that. How many games actually come out with a tutorial these days? They're not popular.
What?
To me, that's indicative of him not even like playing current games. Tutorials are more popular than ever. As much as I hate them, I personally hate tutorials. Really, sometimes they're needed, okay? In situations where they're needed, fine. But creative game creators, like you pick up Mega Man X for example. Okay, I think at the very beginning of the game, if it's the correct game I'm thinking of, there's a spot where unless you use the Mega Buster, unless you charge that button to fire out a fully powered shot, you can't break the wall and continue going. So at some point you have to figure out that you can charge your gun up and fire a more powerful shot. And then a little while later in the same level, you get trapped in this pit and you cannot get up by simply jumping. So the only way you can progress forward, the only way, is by realizing that you jump on the sides, you start sliding down, and you can start scaling the wall to get yourself out of the pit. Now just with that, there was no text on screen, no tutorials, no anything, just here it is, figure it out. And you know what? We did fine. We did fine. It's not like today where there's all different types of examples of things that have been done. This was the first time these things were being done, and we did just fine without the tutorials. Okay? Now, tutorials are more prevalent than ever, and this guy who's a writer for video games, in the video game industry, is saying that they're not popular. They're more prevalent than ever. And that's just, to me, more evidence that this guy really just seems out of his element in video games. Maybe he'd be better suited for something else, but that's not my call. My point is saying what this guy says should be taken with a grain of salt if you the type of person that is buying games or researching games based off of what this person is saying. That's my ultimate point with this whole debate. And then he says, so when people tell me that I shouldn't be playing this game because on my first day I was pretty lousy, that's an attitude that argues that games should be shut off in their own little corner, only played publicly by the masters and the experts. I disagree with that view entirely. Okay? I also disagree with that view entirely. I mean, I'm not bragging or anything, but I'm decent at games. I mean, I have a few. I have a 1 credit run of Super Contra, of Gradius 2 for the NES. I'm gonna be releasing soon 1 credit of Contra. But I agree with him. You shouldn't be. The whole elitist attitude really just divides us more than we're already divided. And I don't want to get political or anything, but I mean, we're really divided as a nation already. We don't need more things dividing up us into more fucking groups. So I agree with him. And like I keep saying, I don't believe I don't ascribe to this debate or this opinion that because the guy's bad at games, that he should, this guy should kill himself, or this guy should, go in a hole and never write about games again. No, again, I'm simply saying that no one should read this guy's article and take away his opinion to either buy or not buy a game. That's my concern. Because wouldn't it suck? Wouldn't it suck if someone like this caused, or a few of them, just all at the same time, the perfect storm? I think it's unlikely. Because like you said, and I really do think it's cool how you took a large sample size of videos and did some actual, research into what we're talking about here. I think that was pretty cool. But let's just say an indie game comes out like Cuphead, extremely well done video game, the art is amazing, all of this stuff, but a few well placed articles, reviews like this come out where it's people that can't really play the game, they don't even understand it, they've never even played a game like that, and the game does poorly. To me, right now, the indie scene, in my opinion, has been slowly building to this point. I remember playing Shadow Complex for the first time and just being amazed that, wow, they finally made an old style game again. Granted, it's got these like HD graphics and everything, but I mean, it's a 2D game. It might as well be an NES or Super Nintendo game. Same thing with the new Super Mario Brothers on the DS. I was in line waiting to buy a DS and new Super Mario Brothers when that thing came out. It had been, I don't know how long, and I know that's not an indie game, but it's an old style video game. And my point is that, man, it's really worrisome that, a few games start doing bad in the indie scene and the indie scene dies altogether. Because right now, really, like I said in my previous video, it's really the best time to be a gamer right now, because if you want to play just newer style games, you've got that. If you want to play older 2D style games that have new experiences for you, you can do that too. There's a plethora of old style, new experience games out there. So I don't really want anything to come between me and those games. Now, you also mentioned in your video that you think it's a shame that the Cuphead devs are kind of facing a little bit of scrutiny because of the debate, and that some people are taking away from it that the game's too hard and it's really a bad game and whatever, that it's a shame that they're getting some negative press. And I hope that's really a low percentage for the most part. But knowing that that's happening, wouldn't that also be supporting the argument that this guy writing, it needs to kind of not be taken that seriously? He can still do it. It just needs to be taken with a grain of salt. That way, next time this happens, people can recognize what it actually is, that, the guy's just not that great at the game. No big deal. We don't have to shame him or dox this dude or whatever, but if that's the way it's treated, next time the game devs won't get any sort of flack when this happens. So I think that just lends more to kind of what I'm saying here. Now, as far as the research you did and saying that for someone to provide you with evidence that it's the majority of critics or writers that are bad at games, I tend to agree with you there. I don't see any evidence that it's the majority of these people that are horrible at games. So I tend to agree with you there. Now, as far as Haedox or anyone out there that may disagree with me, you can leave a comment, but I'd really prefer a video response because, you know, you can't really tell the tone of voice that someone's speaking in, and a lot of times things can, you know, get miscommunicated or jumbled, just, you know, kind of lost in translation, and I just find a video response is just that much better. So with that being said, that's gonna do it for me. This is Trevor over at Toploaded Gaming saying, what did the man say to all the doctors? He said, "Hey docs." Hey docs.